Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Genealogy Adventures Live. I'm Brian, and joining me as always is my incredible co-host Donya.
Hey y'all, it's Donya, and we're back for another thought-provoking episode. And today we've got a tough but very necessary conversation.
Very tough and very necessary conversation indeed. Yes, today we're diving into a question that's been on my mind for the last couple of weeks. Why do non-Black people always ignore Black people's warnings in the United States? And I'm going to probably say throughout the diasporic world. We see it over and over again in history, but even in today's world, it feels like Black voices are constantly dismissed until things go wrong. Or if Danya has frozen, Danya can. Sorry, we're having a little bit of a technical glitch here. So I'm not sure which one of us has actually frozen. I'm thinking it may be Danya, but it could equally be me. It's just one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation is, if you're a student of African American history, and again, if you're a genealogist, there's no way that you can research your ancestry, your family history, without researching the times that your ancestors lived in. Um, and by doing, oh, you're back.
I'm back.
I was just doing my spiel about how genealogy and history go hand in hand, and especially with African American history. Um, you have to research the time that your ancestors lived in, and you start seeing patterns and figuring things out. Oh dear, have you frozen again? So I'm going to carry on. Again, one of the reasons why we're having this conversation, or have I frozen? I hear you. I hear, I hear something in the background. Guys, you have to love technology. You really do. I don't quite know what's going on with my co-host at the minute. There you are. There you are.
I don't know what's going on. I don't know what the problem is. I don't know what's
Mhm.
happening. Let's just get started because I don't know what's happening. So we're just
Okay.
gonna get started with this history. For centuries, Black people in America have been warning about things that were coming, about systems that were broken or would lead to harm, and yet time and time again, those warnings were ignored.
Mhm. And that's where we're starting today. Because again, both Donnie and I feel as though Black people in the United States are constantly telling people, hey, there's a storm coming, and you really need to prepare. We actually dedicated 3 whole episodes of our own show right before the election to covering Project 2025, which I know, Donnie, you really want to get into that a little bit later. But I think it's fair to say, despite all the people that were saying that people like us were scaremongering, um, and weren't telling the truth, I think we can all agree that Project 2025 has been activated. Would you feel that that was a fair comment, Dania?
Oh, most definitely. I am
Hmm.
totally in agreement with that. I mean, I sent you the link where they have a whole tracker for it. So,
Yeah, and that's an
everybody.
amazing, and kudos to the team that put that together. So as you said, Black people always feel as though we're saying that a storm is coming, people are ignoring us, or they shut us down, only to realize later we were right. And this just isn't a recent thing. This goes all the way back to the foundation of this country. And that's kind of where that's the starting point for today. So let's take it all the way back. Um, Donnie, you want to talk about how this actually went all the way back to the institution of slavery?
Yes, so let's talk about that. After slavery ended during Reconstruction, there were many Black leaders warning about the rise of the KKK, the voter suppression, how deeply entrenched racism was in the fabric of this country. But again, the warnings were ignored. I mean, first of all, one of the reasons I feel like the warnings for us was ignored is because we came out of slavery running. We came out of slavery doing things that they didn't think we were going to be able to do. But since that happened and we did what we were doing, it scared the bejesus out of them. And basically, this is what then made them be like, oh, well, we need to not have Reconstruction do this. They shouldn't have this much power to be able to do the exact same things that we can do. They shouldn't be able to do these things. And we're telling them, hey, during Reconstruction era, we need to cut this and nip this stuff in the bud now as a group, since this is what we're doing, because that's what Reconstruction was supposed to have been about, us doing this as a group. These are the things that are happening. And snip, 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 Jim Crow era came into play because they were like, nope. So yeah.
Again, Black people were warning about what would happen if basically Reconstruction was repealed. And they weren't even speaking within their own life about what was going to happen within their own lifetimes. They were intimating that it was going to be a multi-generational thing, that the race issue in this country hadn't been really addressed at all. And that, reading between the lines, I'm just getting a sense that a lot of the Black politicians and civic leaders of that time period were basically saying this is going to come back to haunt all of us. And it has.
Yeah, and they're saying that, this is a problem that is going to just cause unrest. And of course, that is what it did. I mean, it's amazing to me how we can see this future and we can tell people about what's going on, and nobody pays it any attention. Nobody looks at it like, oh, they're just complaining, or as a Black woman, oh, she's just being mean, she's being nasty, or all of those different things. We because Black women get it, unfortunately we get it the worst, because we're always, anytime we are trying to explain something, we become angry. We're the angry person, and all we're doing is trying to explain it. So you have that's going on, and I'm a little tired of it. I've come to the point now where I'm very much don't have patience to deal with none of it.
I'm exhausted by the whole thing. And again, even the Civil War comes into mind. There's something unique about the United States, and it's as though I'm going to say, the white people in this country keep waiting for things to break down instead of listening to the people who are living through it or who lived through it.
That part.
Who have that first-hand knowledge. Because in my opinion, the Civil War should have never happened. It did not need to happen. There's a certain mentality in this country that is, I don't know, stubborn. Stubborn's not even the right word for it. But it's the closest word that I can think of off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, things have to go to such an extreme in this country. And again, in my opinion, it shouldn't have to. Common sense or critical thinking and some compromise, can get around these things. But, fast forward to the Civil Rights Movement. And once again, we see Black leaders like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X warning about exactly the same things. Police brutality. But back in the day, those were slave catchers and the militia. Because don't forget, after the Civil War, we had to deal with the white militia who were... Black people have always lived with martial law. And so have Native Americans since the 1600s. If there are two people in this country who knew and know and understand how martial law works, the savagery in which it can be released against you, it's Black people and it's Native Americans. And the whole point of us in 2025 is trying to spare everyone else from having to go through it or even experience it.
Well, the thing that gets me is that they're not the only ones. Also, the people from the Holocaust, the Jews.
But not in this country.
No, not necessarily. And yeah, you were speaking specifically in a different country, but I'm just saying, if we look at it overall, this is not something that's just even held to this country. It's a story that's actually people who are considered marginalized or minority. They're the ones that always have the answer, or not necessarily the answer. They actually see what's coming, and they see the calm. They see the storm before the calm. They see what's coming, and they never ever listen to them, because it was like that for the Holocaust. I mean, you can go back for those that that read the Bible, that are Christians. That and you read the Bible. Moses was telling the Egyptians, "This is what's going to happen if you don't let these people go. I'm going to need you to do that." He's telling them. He's letting them know these are the things that's going to occur. No, it ain't gonna happen. I don't believe you. Nope. Instead, I'm gonna make this happen. He told him, just like what Whoopi said to what you call him in The Color Purple. Until you do right by me, everything you
Mhm.
think about is gonna crumble. What you do to me is gonna come back to you 3 times fold. These are the things that has always been done. We've always said it. It's literally in our soul to be like that, and nobody listens.
And I would just spend a hot minute or two talking about some genealogy specific examples of when Black people stood up, cried. We didn't cry out, but we certainly raised the alarm, and we were poo pooed and we were gaslit. People played in our face. And
Huh,
the first one was when Ancestry decided to raise its matching algorithm for DNA testing.
that part.
And Black genealogists, specifically those of us who are very familiar with genetic genealogy, immediately raised the alarm because guess who formed most of our small DNA matches? And those are matches between 5.5 centimorgans and about, what was it, six or six,
7.
6.5?
It was 7.
Seven centimorgans. White people. Because this didn't happen by accident. I wear the skin of slavery. I will never have this. Donya, I just realized this the other day. I told you my unicorn has been trying to find an entirely uninterrupted Black African line in my tree. I realized I'll never have that because neither they're all of my four, well, three of my great grandparents were mixed. Two of them triracial, Native, African, and European. The other great grandparent was Jewish. I will never find an entirely Black line. And that kind of kills me.
You got me thinking now. I wonder, do I have an entirely Black line? I don't. I guess you gotta. For me, it's got to be how far back we would be looking. I think the furthest. I think that would probably be on my grandfather's side.
That for me, whether it's free people of color or enslaved people, multiple, I see it in my tree, just multiple generations of that Europe. That's why I'm knocking on 60% European DNA. It just
Wow.
kept getting introduced on all of those lines.
Wow.
And those really smaller, those much smaller segments, those were like the mid to late 1600s, early 1700s, which is a block for a lot of my enslaved ancestors. So those matches were really important. We raised the alarm. You got pushed back on it. I got pushed back on it. Y'all don't know what you're talking about. All of this. Please explain to me how any European DNA match in a Black person's test kit results is going to be a false positive.
Listen, my mother is a perfect example. My mom is just literally, she's a perfect example. My mom, and they gave me a whole lot of pushback because when my mom's DNA first came out, she was like 80 something,
Mhm.
85, about 85% African, and then about 14% European, and then everything else was whatever it was. I lie to you guys not. My mother's DNA slowly, for every moment that they changed that algorithm, my mom's African DNA continued to go up and up and up and up until she got to like what, 96,
Yeah,
97.
it was a crazy amount.
Yeah, it was like 96, 97% African. I snapped and I called them and I was like, so let me ask y'all a question. And they were like, what? And I said, well, if you saw somebody that came on your DNA that was 97% African, would you just really consider them as someone who just came from Africa? They responded, yes. And I said, well, there's a problem because my mother's three-time great-grandfather came here before 1769. He was actually born here in 1769. How is it that she's 97% African? I
And
said, and
he
she
was
and she
mixed.
got white people mixed all up in
Mhm.
her thing. I said,
And
please tell me.
and he was mixed.
And he
Moses
was
had a
mixed.
Moses had a white father and a mulatto mother because
And
his
he
mother
was
was mixed.
exactly. And I was like, so y'all explain to me how y'all have my mother at 97% African. I'm like, that doesn't even make sense when we know she has white great grandparents, great great grandparents, or what have you. We know it. It is proven. It is a proven
Mhm.
fact. They
The
had to go
only
back over my stuff.
the only part of this country that I've ever seen so far in terms of a specific group of black people that have that high of African DNA, Gullah Geechee. And that's only because their enslavers were living in the larger population centers and didn't really go back to the plantation, so they weren't interfering with their enslaved women that way.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, every single black genealogist, and that went on for months, who were calling out about it, trying to gather as much support from white genealogists that we could, we might as well have been speaking into the void.
I'm trying
But
to tell you, I swear, I think that's when they put the little red siren connected to my phone number, and then every time it ring, that joker go off. It's her, it's her, it's her.
but guess what happened around a year to 18 months later? All of a sudden, you started seeing white genealogists say, oh, actually, some of my small matches would be really useful right now.
Mm-hmm.
So when they needed them, all of a sudden, they weren't false positives.
Mm-mm. They were not.
But we tried to spare you all that, because if enough of you had joined with black genealogists and calling that hot mess that Ancestry was doing out, we may have prevented it. I'm not saying we would have, but there was a far better chance of them not doing that than just
And there were
leaving it
more
to.
white genealogists that, I mean, did
Mhm.
did not. This is not to say that there weren't any white genealogists that were stepping in and saying these things, because there were. Unfortunately, there is only a handful of white genealogists that actually get what African American researchers go through to find their families. And those white genealogists are the ones that either have family that are black and they're doing the research on it, or they are finding and diving into the fact that they have black family members and they want to know, so they start to do that work. And it's only them. They're the only ones that really go into that particular thing, and they're the only ones that step up and make the comment and make the statement. But unfortunately, because the others just refuse to want to have any dealings with those of the darker complexion, they would much rather just think, different. And unfortunately, that's what it is.
And my second modern example, living it in real time, the hot mess that's going on between the current administration and what it's doing to libraries, archives, repositories, research, the National Archives, firings, sudden closures of major libraries like the JFK Library, which did open a couple of days later, but
It
that
opened,
was a whole.
closed. Yeah.
And it stuns me that there is still a larger percentage, more than people actually speaking out. The number of white genealogists that I've seen on TikTok specifically who are not speaking about this. This will affect, and actually what made me really angry enough to think about doing this as a show, was behind the scenes, and I know it was being said behind my back, when I raised the alarm about the possibility of some shenanigans occurring at NARA after all of those senior and mid-level people were fired, furloughed, whatever you want to call it, that I was being an alarmist, that I was exaggerating the threat. Um, Kind of to the point where I was kind of getting the vibe, oh, black people got to black people. They have to be extra. They've got to, go the extra distance to raise a potential alarm for something that's probably not going to happen. You still sure that that's not going to happen?
Hmm. And
I
you
mean,
know,
they just,
go ahead,
I
go
was,
ahead.
I was just going to say, they just defunded and fired everyone at the Institute for Museums and Libraries. Gone.
Everybody.
Hmm.
And that's crazy. And then, then you got people like Barack Obama. He just did a video talking about if he had done the exact same things that's what's going on now. Him and his administration had done this. He was like, where would I be? And he just paused, and all you could hear was that whole eruption of people just doing everything because they know where he would be. He would be locked up. He would be locked up. He would be impeached. He would, whatever it is negative, whatever it is that we are thinking that should be happening to this current administration right now, we know for a fact that it would be his. And then not only did he went a step further, he didn't even hold it to himself. He actually held it to other presidents and saying, where would we be? We told y'all this was going to happen. When you sit and if you're thinking about modern times, let's look at the actual campaign. Did did Kamala not tell you what was going to happen? Like in real time. She did it in a whole nother way. She did it from the political standpoint. She told them step by step on some of the things that was going to happen. And sure enough, step by step, these things began to occur. So, yeah.
So I'm going to flip the script slightly on this one. Um, so we're talking about modern times, and yeah, let's carry on bringing this conversation into the present day, because you can still see the patterns that we're talking about. And again, one day someone of the non-melanated persuasion really is going to have to sit down and explain to me why there's a knee-jerk reaction when Black people, a whole people, speak up in one voice to say that an injustice is happening. And we're either called liars, we're called, it's said that we're exaggerating, we're playing the victim card, we're playing the race card, like 400 years of living under military occupation ain't gonna do that to you. But we still see the patterns. Black Americans still sound the alarm about things like police brutality, health disparities,
Right.
systemic inequality, and too many times those warnings are just ignored or belittled.
You're absolutely right. Let's take how they use the Tuskegee Airmen. Well, not the Tuskegee Airmen, the syphilis
Mhm.
experiment. The syphilis experiment. They used that experiment because they already knew, they were already told what was going to happen, but they wanted to make sure, so they started testing us on it. They were already told about this particular thing. This was
Mhm.
not new. It was nothing new about it. They knew about it, but they wanted to see the what was going to happen. This is why our men were used as test dummies. This is why, and a lot of people don't really know that, but that's what it was. They were told and warned about syphilis long before. They just
And
needed to do the testing.
and those sneakily done sterilizations on Black women.
Huh.
There's a
It
whole
wasn't no
history of it.
sneak. That lady did that stuff. She knew what she was
Mhm.
doing because she told him in the background. She was like, "Yeah, we're gonna say this, but this is what's about to happen." I can't. Her name just left my mind, and I can't. But she's the reason why Planned Parenthood came to pass. And yeah, yeah, I
So,
cannot think of her name for nothing. Oh my god.
so while you're thinking, I'm going to quickly segue. So to my younger TikTok viewers, that is not a lie. Google it. Black women were sterilized. So
Yeah,
were Native American women. I'm not sure about Spanish speaking women, but I know Native American women and Black women were sterilized. They went in for everyday kind of procedures or general health care, came out sterilized. Google that stuff. There are whole books written on the subject.
and you better hurry up because they're gonna try to figure out how to cleanse the
Mhm.
internet too. So
You
that's
know,
another.
something that would resonate probably more to a younger audience is COVID-19. Black people, Spanish speaking people all said, listen, we are dying at a disproportionate rate to white people. Now, remember, during the lockdown, those numbers hadn't been tracked. So when the government was saying, yeah, we need to go into government lockdown, yeah, there were those people who were unhappy about that and kicking off. But even then, there was a sizable number of Caucasian Americans who were like, yep, do what you need to do. We all need to be safe. And as soon as those numbers came out, and it was mostly Black and brown people who were dying disproportionately, you remember they nearly rioted over that stuff. Open up the doors, open up the economy. We don't care about, let them die. And we
Mm-hmm.
know that that's how they felt, because look at how they're deporting people right now. No sympathy, no empathy, nothing. So we
Nothing.
know they don't care about us. But we raised that alarm, and I still don't feel as though we were properly listened to. Not during, well, definitely not during the Trump administration. The first one, the Biden administration, yeah, there was a shift there. But
Yeah,
there's still
no, you're
but
absolutely
those
right.
but those underlying health disparities still remain. Again, is why I feel a kind of way about these women's bodily autonomy bills that have been passed. Black women have a higher rate of a negative prenatal delivery, postnatal health care than white women do. They die disproportionate,
Always have.
always have.
Always have. And the lady's name, thank you, Michelle. The lady's name is Margaret Sanger. She started the Planned Parenthood.
That's it.
That's her name. But the thing is that when you're talking about women and their health, when we say something is wrong with us, they're like, oh, you're just, you're just saying that you're just doing, it's nothing wrong. It's just a stomach ache, or it's just this. This is why I stay on my daughter so much. When she don't feel good, go to the doctors. As much as I complain, my cousin, he knows me and he knows the stuff that I go through, and he knows that my mom and I go to a particular doctor. Let me tell y'all something. The way I love my doctor, my mom's doctor, now my daughter and my son's doctor, the way I love this man is beyond compare. But the way he irritates my soul is also crazy. But it's a good irritant because he does not take anything for granted. This is a doctor that will literally look at you and say, my stomach hurt. Trust, know, and believe you are going to get a test for everything that you can get tested for in the stomach area. He is going to keep you. And if you go to the emergency room, be prepared to stay if he finds out. And if you real good under him, he going to know anyway. Because he's already got your stuff set up so that when you walk into the emergency room, he's getting a phone call and they're telling him, hey, this is going on, blah, 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 blah. No matter what doctors, or no matter what hospital it is, whether he has an affiliation with it or not, he know more about what's going on before I do. I love him, but I hate him. But I love him. I love him because he saved my mother's life. He saved my life. He's done so much. And it's very rare for Black women to have a doctor that pays that much attention to you, that makes sure that everything that's going on with you is okay. He does not pay that. He don't play those games. But I was blessed to get a doctor like that. And I love him.
Remind me, there's a really famous children's story. Pretty much anyone in the Western world has heard it. What is the name of the story or the fable about a character who kept saying that the sky is falling and the sky is falling and it wasn't
The little
falling?
boy, it's the boy who cried wolf.
That was
Type,
it.
yeah, the boy who cried wolf.
When have we as a people ever cried wolf?
Never.
So why do we always get treated like we have and we do?
Don't know. I saw a meme the other day, and the meme was talking about a veteran. He kind of snapped because you can't get on any of these things on Facebook without somebody turning it political, and then they start talking about what Trump is doing, what he's not doing, and so on and so forth. And This veteran was like, yeah, if he did what he was supposed to do, he wouldn't have people coming after him. So don't sit up here and ask us not to be nasty towards you when you've been nasty towards us, talking about liberals towards GOP or whatever. And he was like, you've been nasty towards liberals for all this time. You get what you deserve. This was an older white veteran who literally snapped on a white woman. He was like, I don't care how you feel. I don't want to hear it. So then one guy responds back, told him that he needed to get his do some history. And they actually posted up a meme of Hitler and Trump on the other side. Million weren't upset about it or what have you, but all Trump did was lower your taxes, which he has not, and and did something else. But killing 80 million people, I was like, first of all, to make the comparison of Hitler and Trump is crazy to me. You did that, not nobody else. The person that you're trying to talk bad to, trying to make Trump look good. You did that. You tried to make Trump look good compared to Hitler. But since you're going to put Hitler up there, Trump is responsible for the hundreds of millions of people that died from COVID. He's responsible for that. Because number one, and most importantly, he did not follow the book that was left behind, the instructions that was left behind by both Biden and Obama on how to deal with this type of thing. He threw it away. So who else is to blame?
Mhm. And
Who
again,
else?
the other dynamic I have found very interesting is MAGA in particular they're really angry that Black people aren't out in the streets and that we're not being demonstratively angry and furious. How are we going to be furious about a really little, sad little man through executive orders taking stuff away from Black people? It was never ours to begin with, and we ain't going to miss what was never really ours. Y'all are the
It was
ones who
never ours to
benefited.
begin with.
No, y'all benefited from it way more than we did. Again, going back to Project 2025, the magic words, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. Yeah, white women and white men benefited from that to the nth degree more than Black people benefited from that the least, at the
Yeah.
very least.
Yes. And Brian, it was Chicken Little that did The Sky is Falling. So there were
Chicken Little.
two. There
Okay.
were actually two. There was Chicken Little, and then there was the boy who cried wolf, because he was the one that would always say, somebody's coming to do this, or coming
Mhm.
to get our sheep. And then when the wolf finally did come, no
Yeah.
one was there.
Well, I
Yeah.
tell you
So it
this,
was,
we
yeah.
as a people, we never talk about the sky or the wolf unless it's actually there.
All of that. Just to just put it all out there.
And there's probably a psychology to that because we have never been believed. So why put ourselves up for that? I
That's
chose to
it.
put my head above the parapet to save as many Black genealogically related records that I could. And, thankfully having, in partnership with great organizations like Family Search and 10 Million Names and American Ancestors, the African American Civil War Museum and others, they got it. They saw the threat. Um, but it was me, a Black man, who in this toxic environment raised my head above the parapet, and it's like, okay, no one's doing anything. Something needs to be done. I'll do it.
Yeah. And then
And
what did
what
they say to you?
uh overreacting, over-egging that would be a British saying, over-egging the pudding, but you know what I mean, overreacting, fear
Yeah, but then
mongering,
what happened? Because
scaremongering.
you remember you told me that somebody said, "Oh, I guess Black people are coming to save the day again," or something
Yeah,
to
yeah.
that nature.
So someone did
Yeah,
say, oh, okay, black people are coming to save the day.
yeah,
Because
that
we were
part.
having,
But they
it
wait.
was part of the conversation about why is it always Black people that have to lead, apart from Nathaniel Bacon, and Lord, do I wish that man had not died from pneumonia or whatever illness he had. Apart from Nathaniel Bacon, what white person is actually, I guess John Brown, although his was kind of sticky, um, really stood up that way,
Hmm.
really called BS on the system. No, we ain't standing for it, and actually fighting for everyone. I know
I
Bacon's
mean,
Rebellion didn't start off that way. It started off as an anti-Native American thing, but it quickly morphed into something else.
I think that there are many white people that have done that. Let's not, take away that, because the Underground Railroad wouldn't have been as successful, I personally feel, without it, because they needed those extra stopping spots and places in order, that they
Oh,
were in, for that to happen. So we've always had people to help. We've always had people that actually listened, but it just wasn't enough of them.
no,
And
I agree with
maybe,
that.
huh?
The point that I'm making is those were, I'm not going to, those were more on the down low. Those were off the radar, and they had to be, that had to be kept on the down low because you didn't want to expose the stops or the conductors on the Underground Railroad.
Right.
It had to operate in secret. I'm talking about, a respected person who actually stood up and fought, called BS on the whole system, saying
Eleanor Roosevelt.
all of you 1%. Yeah, but these people fought. I'm not necessarily saying that you need to take up arms, but Nathaniel Bacon wasn't playing around.
Yeah, no, I
He had
understand
the
what you're
Virginia.
saying, but I'm saying
Mhm.
another person was Eleanor Roosevelt.
Oh yeah,
She wasn't playing. She didn't take that. She wasn't playing. She had everything to
oh,
do with black women forming the women's God, why is this stuff going out of my head all of a sudden? But she had everything to do with the Mary Bethune organization that was formed. It was formed in help
oh,
with Eleanor
mm,
Roosevelt. So there are all kinds of ways, and there are all types of white people that have helped, that stood up in their way of fighting. And I don't want them, and I guess my thing is, I don't want them to think that we're necessarily attacking them. The problem is, it ain't enough of them that's doing that. It's not enough of them. Like, there was one video that I saw. A lady was in complete tears, and um I think I told you about I told you about this lady was in full tears because, white lady, she was like, I don't know what's going on. I'm tired of reading all of this other stuff, but I need y'all to know that I am here. I'm going to be here. I will forever be here for y'all. Love wins. All this hate loses. This, that, and the third. She went through all of that. And then she said why she was in it. She said, I have skin in the game. And she brought two mixed daughters into the thing. She was like, what we not going to do is mess with these babies. That's when it got bad for her. That's when she was like, hold on. So it literally almost has to it has to affect them directly in order for them to actually start to stand up. And that's what angers me.
yeah,
Why does it have to affect you
mm,
directly?
that I guess that is also the foundation of my irritation and anger and annoyance. It shouldn't have to direct. You should just see something as being inherently wrong and
It's
inherently
wrong.
bad.
Thank you,
Um,
Betty. The National Council of Negro Women. I couldn't
because I will be on, and I will say as well in defense, I've seen a lot on TikTok and YouTube Reels in particular. There have been a lot of white content creators, and specifically middle-aged people, and kind of going into the older end of the spectrum, um, speaking out. Specifically speaking to other white people who are like, well, why aren't the black people marching? Why aren't they doing this? And why aren't they doing that? And then it's like, listen, no, they've done enough. They've been out here in these mean streets for centuries, and we know it doesn't
but
go
who
well for them.
and who are those white people? Because you said older. They are civil rights people. That's who they are. They already know. So they're right in the mix and in the cusp, right in the crust of what's going on, of what's been happening. They see it, they picture it. I'm telling you, I was almost in tears talking with Loki about his mom. And he was like, Donya, you need to calm down. No, I feel like we failed her. And every civil rights person that got arrested, that had stuff thrown on them, that dogs were biting them, I feel like we failed them something severe, because we are right back where they were to a certain degree. And she had to tell me, no, you're not completely there, because he had to talk to her and tell her, look, she flipping out, because I was feeling really bad. As Oprah said, I was feeling mighty low, because this was a lot for me to be able to know that I'm looking at this lady, she's still alive, and now she got to go through this again. This ain't even her fight no more. This is not her fight. This was a white woman that stood up and been standing since she was a kid. She stood in front of her parents and her grandparents because she had a black friend that lived across the tracks. And they had an issue with it. She was like, she didn't care. She been standing since she was a kid. How could we let somebody like that down? That's
again,
my issue.
having a crazy conversation with my siblings. I'm the youngest. I was born in 65. In my lifetime, I've had rights taken away from me. More than one. And it's insane to me that I was born in this country, on a naval base, in a land that espouses liberty and freedom. So why is it that as an African American, I always felt more free in England, my adopted second country, than I do in the land where I was born, where I'm a 12th generation American? That's crazy and shameful.
It is. It's sad. It's sad. That's very sad. But when we sit and we talk about all these things, and we're talking about them not listening, like Brian said earlier in the show, we had 3 shows that talked about Project 2025. 3.
Mm-hmm.
Do y'all know, just now, very quickly before the show began, we were talking about the tariffs that are going on and how GOP people are not really good on the tariffs. Well, you were told. And the sad thing about it is they weren't even told by Black people to a certain degree. They were told after the facts because Black people were reading the mandate for leadership, but they were told by the book itself. Do y'all know that they mentioned tariffs in that book 119 times? They were told. Still not listening. Still not paying it no attention. But they were told that the word tariff is listed 119 times in that Mandate for Leadership book. I want y'all to sit on that, because it's constantly being told to everybody that this is following this, that everything that this man is doing is following this book to the letter, and it is.
Oh, it's following it even down to the punctuation marks.
Oh yeah.
That's
period. Pause. All of that. All of that.
I want to touch on something really quickly before we segue into you talking about tone policing, and cycling back to, again, that question that is the title of our show. Why do non-Black people so often ignore the warnings from Black people? I think, and we both agree, that a lot of this also comes down to power dynamics. When you don't have to live through something, when you're not the marginalized people, it's just easier to dismiss it, I guess. There's just this deep-rooted discomfort with Black voices being heard as truth tellers. And we're sorry that our history is an uncomfortable truth. It is what it is. And if we can accept that, you can accept it and learn from it.
Exactly. I mean, there's so much different. It's, I don't know. I'm just at the point, I watched another a clip by Joy-Ann Reid, and she really kind of went into the explanation of what the what this whole thing that's going on, what it's leading up to. And it's leading it's going back to the early 1900s, before taxes were done. That's what all of this, that's where he's trying to take us. If y'all didn't know, the link, for those that don't, that are friends with me, the link is literally on my page. My page don't allow people to see stuff because I'm being watched, but yeah, the link goes, it literally goes back to that, before taxes were done and tariffs were done then. And that was the other thing that I had to say to this person. Yeah, this is where it's taken us back to. However, during then, it was just tariffs. On now, we're getting taxed and tariffs that's getting put on us on top of these things. I said, and he's trying to move us back there because it was during that time, right before the Great Depression, that their monies, excuse me, because ours was fine, but that their monies were very low, and they were poor, and they was keeping them poor. That's when all of that was going on. And then when that Great Depression hit and all that started happening, Black people were good because we couldn't participate in the banks. We couldn't participate in the stock market. We didn't have the ability to do any of those things. So most Black people didn't even know a Great Depression was even happening until they started seeing white people on the street asking for food, asking for help, and things of that nature. Meanwhile, we walking around in the beautiful church outfits that we walked in so very well and eloquently. Yes.
Yeah. And that's why Black farmers today aren't crashing out about US aid or AID being pulled.
No.
That didn't affect them because they never benefited from that. All of those farmer subsidies that have been pulled from white farmers, and they're losing their minds. Oh, I nearly cursed there. They're they're losing their minds.
Let it
Well,
out.
black farmers never benefited from that, so it never
Never.
hurt them. It hasn't harmed them. It didn't hurt them. I'm
Never.
also going to say really quickly, it also seems to me that there's a deep-seated tendency in the United States to prioritize white comfort over Black reality. And what I mean by that is a lot of times non-Black people just don't want to face the hard truths about the systems that have traditionally benefited them until now, because this is why they're really in the streets. Those benefits that they used to get from those systems, they ain't getting them anymore. So they'll ignore the
No, they're not.
warnings that would force them to confront uncomfortable truths. Folks, Black people are the canaries in the coal mine in this country, always have been. Like I said, when Wall Street catches a cold, Black bank accounts catch double pneumonia.
Ain't that something?
Mm-hmm.
They really do. They really do. Well, this has
And we
been a
want to just,
very huh?
and just to quickly cycle back to the top of the show, I know I've said some harsh things. I know you've said a couple of harsh things, but
I
at
ain't
the end of the
apologizing.
day,
So if that's what you about
I'm
to
not.
do,
No, no, no,
Brian, you
no.
go ahead.
I'm not apologizing. I stand by what I said. We tried to spare you from this. We did, as a
Yes, we did.
people, we stood up and did everything in our what little power we had. We used every platform that was available to us to tell you, to educate you, and to warn the United States what would happen. You elected that man. We told you about Project 2025. We did our best, and we were
We
ignored.
did. We did. We tried. It
I
didn't
don't think
work.
there's anything that we could have, as a people, that we could have done differently. Can you see anything that we missed?
No, not a thing. And now we're sitting it out and we watching y'all go through what y'all go through while we drink
Hmm?
whatever it is
And we
that we're
do.
drinking.
And I know it may seem as though we're sounding kind of callous about it, or Black people writ large are being callous about it, but we're exhausted. We're tired of
We are being callous.
saying the same things over and over and over and over again. We're tired of looking after everyone else to our own detriment, to not even be
I'm
listened
being
to over.
callous.
Mhm.
I'm being very callous. Yep. I'm doing the I told you so. Yep, I sure
Or
am.
we
I am
people
doing the
have
I
stopped.
told you so. And in the meanwhile, while I'm doing the I told you so, I'm also telling my kids, don't this, don't that. I am making sure that I keep my family safe, and I'm making sure that I keep the people around me that I love, our studio, our video virtual audience. I'm keeping it real. I'm keeping it as 100 as possible. Yes, I am, and I don't care. I'm saying that this is me.
And
I don't know about nobody else.
I'm gonna jump on that real quick. Because when these warnings go ignored, the ones that Donnie and I have been talking about for almost an hour, the cost, it's not just immense. I'm going to say it's immeasurable because people suffer. There are people in North Carolina and Tennessee today, victims of flooding and hurricane. Nashville is flooded. Have you seen those crazy images coming out
Uh-huh.
of Nashville? There's no money for them. So they're suffering. That's a cost to not listening to Black people and putting that man into office. Communities suffer. And sometimes it leads to irreparable damage. And I'm hearing estimates that it could take this country anything from 30 to 40 years to recover just from the first 2 months of this presidency.
Yeah, and
Two
we haven't gone
months.
90 days yet.
No, we haven't.
We have not hit his 100-day mark yet. This is the longest 100-day mark for a president ever. My daughter is sitting here. She was like, really? Like, yeah.
So that means for the rest of my life, being in my 60s, this country's going to be a hot, broken mess.
And for
It
my
can,
daughter's life, being in her 30s, it's going to be a
yes.
hot, giving it a younger age. My son, who's 23, it's going to be a hot mess. It's going to take their entire lifetime for it to get better, for things to move better. Their entire lifetime.
Crazy.
So I'm, like I said, I'm sitting here, I'm sipping my water or whatever. Well, I have water in here, but I'm telling you right now, I'm sipping my water, drinking my tea, sitting back and taking care of and counting my money and making sure that I'm doing it right and making sure I'm holding on to what I need to hold on to as best as possible, spending only when necessary. And I don't care if we say that every time we get on this show. We are telling you guys, spend only when necessary. We know that we are, we're kind of held to Amazon to a certain way or whatever, and we're kind of held because it's delivery or we don't have the way to get here or there. We understand that, but if you don't have to use them, don't use them. If you have somebody that you can call and they can take you here, do that. Start doing those things and if you are a person that has a vehicle, be the transport. Be the transport. Don't sit up here and let these people go through that. We ain't got time for that today, y'all. It's chess. We're playing chess, they're playing checkers. You need to move in a very strategic manner. Everything you do from this point on, watch it, look at it, pay attention to it.
Excellent. Very good advice. I'm following it myself. I don't know if you want to hit the end of the prompt. What did Melvin say?
I got it on the thing. He was like, and now he's talking about a third term.
Third term.
That's another show, Melvin. We can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do that right now. Lord Jesus.
Do you want to pick it up at the end of the prompt?
I don't even know where the end of the prompt is. Oh, okay. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Genealogy Adventures Live Show. We hope this conversation sparked some thought, and we'd love to hear your feedback on this topic. As always, continue to post on our social medias, leave us a message, a review, and like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification buttons on YouTube to make sure that people know more about this. And we will see you guys next week.
Yeah, please do all the good things, and we will catch you next time, next Sunday, right here, usual places that you tune into us. 4:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And remember, please stay curious, stay compassionate, and above all, stay listening. Until
Yes.
next week, I'm Brian.
And I'm Donya. Bye, guys.
Bye bye.